So the FA, which is the Football Association, I don't know anything about football, so I'm probably going to say something stupid in this, but I know about trans rights, so I'm going to say all the correct things about that. I just might say something stupid about football. And here we're talking about soccer, real football, where you actually kick a ball with your foot. The FA has already banned trans women and trans girls from playing in their sport, which is garbage. They didn't have any justification for it. They just bowed to political pressure, and that's it. But they've now changed their policy on trans men. And this story was broken by Arthur Weber, who is great, and you should follow him on the various social medias. I think... Did he come on this channel? I'm sorry if he did. I've forgotten if it was him. We did once talk about trans men playing football on this channel. But Arthur is a trans man who plays football, and he found this new policy that they had sneakily announced. So he says, in May 2025, trans women would be banned. To make it crystal clear, this is wrong. Science does not support it. I've seen many friends devastated in tears, falling to their knees on the pitch during their last games for their beloved clubs. The FA has caused unquantifiable misery in its cowardice. So the last article we looked at was great because it was written by cis women talking about trans people, talking about cis women's issues, and they were obviously annoyed. This is a trans person talking about trans issues, and it's just a next step up in rage. But that I'm not criticizing anyone here. It's just good to say when you just write what's actually directly, explicitly true. And it's a bit easier because writing it for a trans publication. I don't know if I've shouted these guys out before, actually. Trans rights. You should check this website out. Trans rights. It's a pun. Rights with a W. If you're listening. Transrights.world. It's a trans-led organization that has trans people writing articles about trans rights. It's really good. Check it out. Donate to them if you can. Anyway, I've steered clear of centering my voice on this thus far because I'm not a trans woman, and therefore it's not my story, it needs to be told. So then he links to trans women playing it. However, since this announcement, the FA has slipped in what I'm calling a de facto ban on trans men's participation. So they've banned trans men as well. And shortly after Arthur covers this, we're going to look at the thing that he's talking about next. The BBC picked it up as well. And this is kind of the story. The FA requires trans men to say they are biologically female, which is, in a lot of cases, factually false. So here I emailed the FA about this, and they sent me this declaration that trans men have to sign in order to be able to play football. So trans men aren't explicitly banned in the same way that trans women are. However, they have to fill in a declaration. They need a letter from a doctor confirming that their testosterone level will be in the normal adult male range, which I don't think is necessarily an issue. I don't know if this is actually backed up by science or not. But the idea of having some kind of hormone restriction isn't the same as a blanket ban. And it's certainly not a position they consistently hold because they're requiring trans men to do that, but they don't require trans women to do that. They've just blanket banned trans women. So it just shows it's all political. Anyway, that's not the part we have an issue with. We have an issue here. This is a declaration that they require trans men to sign. You have to sign this with your name, like a pledge of allegiance. You have to sign it in order to be able to play football at all with the FA, with all the different teams they cover. And it says, I am a biological female whose gender identity is male or non-binary who would like to compete in open age matches and competitions that are reserved for men. They're not saying I am declaring that I'm a trans man and therefore I have to meet certain requirements that cis men don't have to meet for some reason. Or they're not saying that I am, someone who is trans who wishes to participate, and so I have to meet this thing. They're literally making you say something which you might know to be factually false, and also is like a slur for trans people at this point, is like an ideological anti-trans statement, and you have to sign this in order to carry on playing the game that you play. Bearing in mind the position they are holding here is trans men are too dangerous. Sorry, trans women are too dangerous to play with cis women, even though there's no evidence for that at all. But then they just decided they had, like, why should a trans man have to declare any bullshit about this? Like, why is this even relevant? What does this gain? What, like, to just force them to lie about who they are? Oh, obviously written by a gender critical person. It's fair, I think, for them to make trans people say that they're aware of anti-doping regulations. For example, if it was shown that taking testosterone improved cis men's performance, and if for example, I have no evidence of this, then maybe the evidence is not. But if like a cis man with double the testosterone level performed better, then making sure trans men don't have double the testosterone level also might be a fair requirement. And if you're already taking testosterone, maybe it'd be a bit easier for you to just take more, or actually probably not, because it's a controlled substance and it's like impossible to get hold of anyway. I don't, in theory, have a issue with them making you sign a declaration saying that you're aware of the doping regulations. And then they make you say some other bullshit. There are physiological and performance differences between adult biological females and adult biological males. Like, what are you talking about? Why are you forcing them to, like, sign off on this bullshit which you don't have evidence for? Where's the studies on trans men versus cis men's performance in football? Like, you haven't got those, have you? There aren't any, are there? And are you saying trans men who transitioned before or after puberty, have you taken that into account at all? Are you even aware of that as a thing? No, it's just like, you could say, I understand that I'm taking like a risk playing football because any footballer could break their leg. Like, it's okay to require all footballers to sign a thing. Maybe you could even word something that said, I, as a trans person, am aware that there are greater risks playing football because the FA seems to be transphobic and homophobic and doesn't really care about its players. I don't know. But here they're obviously going for this. Trans men and trans women's biology doesn't change in transition, and somehow you're a physical danger, or you're in physical danger if you're a trans man, and you have to sign it. This is a declaration. It's just bullshit. My treatment will not fully alleviate those differences and consequential increased safety risk. They have no evidence of this at all. They haven't provided studies of this in any way. So this is already completely garbage, that they're requiring you to sign something that you know to be false in order to play. So I think a lot of people are going to be like, well, fuck this, I'm not going to play. If you're requiring me to just lie on it, like literally lie, what is this, a legal document or not? If it's a legal document, they're requiring you to lie in a legal document. And if it's not, then it's completely worthless. But they also, it's actually worse, if you can believe it, than even this, because they have this single page on who is eligible to play football. And they have said, but who knows why they have written this, they have said eligibility conditions: only biological females may play in open age matches and competitions that are reserved for women. But here they've said only biological females, i.e. those born with ovaries. So now cis women who are born without ovaries are banned from football as well? What? Oh, where has this come from? Like, was this your attempt to define sex in a binary and immutable way, and now you've got a position where sex is defined by not whether you have ovaries or not, but whether you once had ovaries or not. So now there's a whole group of cis women who are now banned from playing football, at least according to this policy, but they'll probably never see it because it says for trans people and it doesn't mention intersex people at all. And then it says only biological males, i.e. those born with testes, may play in open matches with the sole exception of trans men. So you don't, if you weren't born with testicles and you're a cis man, you can't play with cis men, even though trans men, whether they were born with testicles or not, are allowed to play. So so whether you have testicles or ovaries or not doesn't actually matter. All that matters is whether you had them at another point in your life, even if they had no effect on your puberty at all, because maybe you had puberty blockers, or maybe you were born with ovotestes, or like streak gonads, or one of each, and went through some kind of medical induced puberty because it was discovered before you reached natural puberty anyway. Who knows where we stand with this at all? Like, completely nonsense. To me, it looks like the person who wrote this hasn't read a single book ever, has done absolutely no studies on this. They've had no consultation on this with experts. They've just gone for, oh, I think a woman's the one born with ovaries, so I'll just write this down. And a man's born with testicles. And then that's just it. They've just completely given up. And it just shows like the level of confidence you have for their understanding of human biology when this is what they've gone for. This isn't like niche stuff. Okay, sure, if you pick a random person off the street, they might be surprised to know there are some women who are born without ovaries. But they're not writing a fucking biology-based inclusion policy for who can perform, like who can compete in what sport, are they? Like random people off the street. The like group of people who they conjured to write this should have been experts in human biology, experts in sport. This is the FA. This isn't some local organization that only has £100 as their annual budget or something. This is like one of the richest organizations in the world, and they couldn't even be bothered to get someone who could even attempt to write a good definition of what they're claiming biological female and male even means. Just unbelievable how lazy and arrogant and clearly political this decision is. Like, they cannot claim that they've looked at all the studies and got experts involved if their official, like, this is literally the full thing. Their official policy just comes out with cis women who were born without ovaries can't play football, without them probably even realizing that's what it says. Anyway, so I sent them an email saying, hello, I am a journalist that covers women's and LGBT issues. A recent quote for you saying, only those with ovaries may play. Can you confirm whether this means that cis women born without ovaries are also banned from competing? Are women who have had their ovaries removed required to prove that they were born with ovaries? What test is used for that? If you're banning, like, if a woman turns up and she doesn't have ovaries, and like, you just say, did you used to have them? And if she's like, no, but I was born a girl, sorry, you're banned. If she says, no, but I was born a boy, sorry, you're banned. But if she says, no, I had them removed, then she's allowed to play. Even those three might be functionally, biologically identical for the purposes of playing football. So what's the argument here? What's the argument for having one of those groups being allowed to play when the other ones aren't? What's the reasoning? What power does not... They're not even saying whether you have ovaries today. It's whether you had them specifically as a baby. Anyway, can you confirm whether cis men born with ovaries are allowed to compete with women? It has happened. I mean, if you've got an ovary and a testicle, does it now just matter whether you consider yourself a man or a woman and you can compete in both because you actually fit into both of those categories? Even if they weren't for male puberty, can you confirm if people born with ovotestes or a combination of ovaries and testicles are allowed to compete with women? And I did get a reply. I actually got quite a quick reply. And they said, hello, yes, we can respond to this. And they just sent me this with no other explanation. So I said, thank you for confirming that this is your policy. Can you answer the following questions on it? And just wrote all the same questions again. And I suspect they won't reply. If they do reply and they try and fob me off again, I'm just going to ask the same questions again. Why don't you send them an email? They actually responded very quickly. So they've obviously got people reading their emails. I just typed in the FA contact, I think. The website for the English Football Association. And then media.relations@thefa.com. Send them an email and ask what the hell this means, because, and why. This is just such an obviously rubbish, rushed out, political, non-science-based attempt to quell the anti-trans rage policy. I just don't know why things that are this clearly anti-science are allowed to be legal. Obviously, the Supreme Court's just ruled that biological sex is binary, and it's obvious despite that not being true, so that's probably why. But we need to push back on this kind of rubbish. So yeah, what an embarrassment. And oh yeah, sorry, I skipped over the last part of Arthur's article here. Arthur says, yeah, don't just take it from me. Take it from trans men who are actually affected by this. Arthur says, I am not a biological female. I will not concede to talking points from those calling for my eradication. But more importantly than my own view, I do not see any other trans men choosing to define themselves this way either. We are men regardless of where we are with our social and or medical transitions. In response to receiving this document, I did what the FA clearly haven't. I actually spoke to trans men and trans-masc people who play football with cis men. I probably know more trans people than FA do anyway. Trans people do all know each other after all. Well, I mean, I guess I know Arthur, so not being the allegations. Every single one said they disagreed with the way the declaration was worded. I would never agree to anything that says I am a biological female, said one. I'd personally be really, really uncomfortable signing that, and it would put me off wanting to play, wrote another. The majority expressed disgust that the FA would pivot from inclusive language to the words of anti-trans campaigners. That's gross. 100% transphobia, wrote one. Another put it more simply, ugh, no. Are they trying to humiliate us by making us sign? Asked one man. Honestly, and this, if you're new to listening to argument between trans people and transphobes, this might seem a bit wacky. I honestly think they are. I genuinely think that a gender critical person wrote that, and they get some kind of joy of forcing us to do anything. Like, that's what being gender critical is all about. And they absolutely they would love the idea of forcing trans men to sign some legal declaration saying they believe they're biologically female just so they can, like, play their sport, do their hobby. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that was a real thing. How humiliating and degrading it's football. Why is this happening? Said another. The FA knows what inclusive language is. It's used terms we prefer in previous documents. So what is the purpose of not choosing to use them now? Is it to put us in our place? Yeah, exactly. The whole FA approach has put me off playing, so I don't anymore, one trans man said to me. I doubt he's the only one, and I can't help but wonder if that's the point. So definitely check this article out as well. There's more stuff there. But Arthur also, I saw him saying that he got so many responses, he just couldn't include them all in this article because it would just go on and on. But like, I can understand as a trans woman, I would not be signing a document that said, in order to like play Pokemon cards, I have to declare that I'm a biological male, because it's just untrue.